the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Not a boom for the people of Arizona or for the people of this country. The only people who it's a boom for are the people that own the gambling companies. So they're making money hand over fist.
Les Bernal, National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling, says so many are being destroyed financially.
Everyday citizens, especially young males in Arizona, are losing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
March Madness is now heating up, and you probably, maybe you're playing a bracket. You know, gosh, it's a Cinderella story if you end up winning, right? I mean, chance of winning the bracket is such a long shot. Maybe you threw a few bucks on the game, right? With the family, with friends, maybe the office pool. It could be a lot of fun. It makes the game kind of interesting. You know, you got camaraderie, you got competition, you got the hope that your team's going to win. You're watching those buzzer beaters. I get it. Believe me, I do. But I want to address this a little bit and look a little bit beneath the surface, because what I'm seeing here, and I have no problem with it if it's all done in moderation and for fun. Believe me, I have no problem. I often share my own story. Like, my father was a compulsive gambler too at one point in his life, and he bet on everything from the horses to baseball games. I mean, you name it. If he could bet on it, he probably could. In gambling, I don't have a compulsive personality. I'm kind of glad about that, because who knows what I'd be doing, right? But it's easy to get sucked in. You don't ever intend to. You can find yourself with little things like this. The game's no fun unless I got some money on it right now. The Washington Times, they were reporting that ever since betting was legalized in a lot of our states, you know what they've seen? There's been this marked increase, 23% increase on online searches. That's related to gambling addiction over the past 5 years. 23%, almost 1 out of 4 people, right, searching for gambling addiction in the past 5 years. Just let that sink in. That's not just a stat. That's your neighbor, right? That's your coworker. Maybe it's your son, your daughter, your spouse. And people's lives are crushed under this. College kids are squandering their education, all the money they have for it, thinking they're going to get it back on the next big bet. People are losing homes and possessions over this, inheritances. So it's a shame. And guess what? Those chains are tightening right now. Market Watch was reporting that in some states, up to 7, almost 8% of households are now participating in online betting. Almost 8%. 8%. I was struck by that. It's almost 1 out of 10 houses participating in online sports betting. You know, the average annual bet, they say, is around $1,100. So it's not pocket change. That's rent money, right? That's grocery money. Maybe it's tuition. Maybe it's your car payment. Here's where it hits a little bit harder. It's not just about finances. It's about hearts. It's about families. It's about that marriage that's now under strain. It's about individuals sinking into despair. And that's the real danger, I think, in this. You know, you can place a bet, swipe of your thumb today. You don't have to call your bookie like you used to in the past. You can watch that game riding the train, sitting at work, right? People do it all the time. And that's a disturbing trend. And now, you know what really irritates me more than any of this? It's these sports betting ads that you get. Have you seen them? I mean, constantly making it look like it's so much fun. It's so easy. And your first bet will give you $200, and ads are everywhere. And I'll tell you what, they're slick. And they tell you, it's just all about the game. But they don't show you the person behind the scenes spiraling in debt, right? The family arguments over that, the division that takes place, the teenager who got hooked before he can even legally drink. So when you normalize something that is wreaking havoc in our culture, you have to stop and ask yourself, what is the value of this? What is the cost of this? What about the people who are the victim of all this? I'd like to welcome to the program Les Bernal. He is the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling, whose mission it is to reveal the truth behind gambling operators to prevent more victims. And he joins me right now. Les, thank you for your time. Thank you for your work, too. It's an important work. I'm grateful to have you.
I'm glad to be on, and I thought your opening was terrific. I thought you summarized this issue as well as anyone has done, you know, and we do a lot of these interviews, and you just really summarized the facts of what's happening to millions and millions of Americans of all walks of life and every state in our country today.
Yeah, I was close to it. I mean, I grew up as a young boy, and my father gambled. He was never, ever physical. He was never abusive. But, you know, it's an addiction that can take the mortgage payment, right? It can take food off the table. It can do things. I don't think people understand it. And it's so easy today. It's not like it used to be. Let's talk about the psychological and the emotional consequences of gambling addiction. We know the financial costs. Maybe speak to that. What are these emotional consequences that you've encountered in your own work?
Sure. So I think it's important, really important for your listeners to understand that when we're talking about the forms of gambling that you're referencing here, it's called predatory gambling. It's when gambling is being done as a business. When it's done for profit, unlike any other industry in the world, there's an adversarial and predatory relationship between the gambling operator and its customer. They're trying to take you down. So that's why we call it predatory gambling. Social gambling, as you touched on at the very beginning of your opening, that the March Madness bracket, you have a friendly wager on the golf course. I'm a very active Catholic. I'm from the Boston area. We have Catholic church bingo. Those are social forms of gambling. Okay, they're not being done for profit. No one's losing their home on it. So here we have these businesses, these powerful gambling corporations that are pushing predatory gambling, whether it's $100 scratch-off tickets in some states, brick and mortar casinos, within 30 minutes from where most people live today. And now you have online gambling coming into every home, every dorm room, every smartphone in the country. And it's important for your listeners to understand here that this isn't like, Purdue Pharma pushing opioids. What we're talking about here is this is an extension of a government program. It's illegal for you and I and any of your listeners to run our own commercialized gambling operation. It's only legal when we partner with state government. So this industry gets treated differently than any other business because the government is an active partner to it. They're exempt from truth in advertising regulations. They're not legally liable from the harm that they cause on families and individuals. So that's what we're talking about here. It was already legal prior to sports gambling being legalized across the country. It was already legal for you and I to place a sports bet with one another. So that kind of behavior and activity was already legal. What was illegal is you and I could not run our own sports book, and that's because it's inherently a very dangerous and predatory form of business. It's a financial scheme that's a ripoff. So that's why it's illegal. So yeah. I just want to make that clear to your listeners and to kind of expand on the opening that you had here on the show today.
No, that's great. Now, you take it away. Anything you think is important to put it into perspective? I mean, you're closer to this than any of us. What strikes me, too, and I mentioned this, too, in my open, the thing that drives me crazy is I'm watching the NFL or basketball or whatever, even just some other show. I'm seeing sports ads pop up right now, and they are effective. I mean, they make it look fun and simple and easy. What do you make, and what role has advertising played in the numbers that we're now seeing in the culture at large? There's this increase in people who have now become addicted, the amount of money that's now being spent.
Yeah. So the advertising and marketing of commercialized gambling, especially online sports gambling, has created an epidemic of young adult and teen gambling addiction across the United States and states that have legalized this. Today, like in states like New Jersey, you have 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids, okay, calling gambling addiction hotlines with their moms on the phone.
Wow.
Okay, like that. If you talk to any high school principal or middle school principal in a state that has legalized sports gambling for more than a couple of years, and if you ask these folks in education, are you seeing a problem with gambling on your campuses and in your school locker rooms, your school cafeterias? To a person, they're all going to say definitively yes. Like, I used to tell a story. Kids used to collect baseball cards or sports cards of their favorite athletes and their favorite teams. That's how you were a sports fan. Today, these big media companies, along with professional sports teams, state government officials, and these gambling corporations, they've made gambling the heart of the sports experience. Yeah, and essentially it's all about gambling, and they squeeze the sports around the gambling. So advertising has normalized it today for kids growing up that you're not a sports fan anymore unless you're gambling on these games. And that's a totally new experience for the American public.
So would you agree or disagree with what I'm about to say? The game's more fun when money's on it?
I would disagree with that. I'm a former high school and college men's basketball coach. And while I understand people enjoy placing a wager on a game,
yep.
We're not talking about placing one wager on a game here. Like a traditional sports bet,
right.
Was betting the spread or betting the over/under. What the final score would be, like the over/under, the score would be 40 points or higher, etc. This is what we're talking about here. This is an industry right now. Online gambling, like people are placing bets, 100 times a day.
crazy.
They're not just betting on traditional sports like the NFL. The state of Oregon reported that the fourth highest sport in terms of the amount of wagering that was occurring on it was like table tennis coming from Eastern Europe. And why is that? Because these people aren't wagering because they're fans of table tennis. What the gambling companies like DraftKings and FanDuel are doing is they're keeping you in constant action. So, the NFL game is over, or the last NBA game is over for the night. Hey, we're going to push you into betting on table tennis. So it's like watching two guys playing table tennis in a YMCA, somewhere in Belarus, and people are losing like tens of thousands of dollars. And so this is all being done in partnership with state governments. It's completely out of control. And I think one key point for you to understand as well for your listeners and you is it's not just, yes, we're talking about sports gambling now. What DraftKings and FanDuel and these other online gambling operators really are at their core is they're online casino operators. So sports gambling apps is what gets guys to bring in, gets you to sign up. But there's 7 states in America where internet casinos today are legalized. And if I may, I just want to kind of put a financial number on what the consequences are of this, just financially, is over the next 5 years, the American people are on course to lose more than $1 trillion of their personal wealth to commercialized gambling that is promoted and sanctioned by state governments. Okay, that equates to $300,000 every minute. So, we have these huge national debates around raising the minimum wage. Should we be taxing billionaires? Half the country doesn't have any assets whatsoever. We just cut the amount of money that the American people are losing by 50% over the next 5 years to what is essentially a government program. That's $500 billion you put back into the daily lives of the American people. There's no policy reform from either party that comes within 1,000 miles of making more of a difference in the lives of everyday people, most of whom are low-income folks.
Well, it's nuts. When you're talking about $500 billion, that's a lot of money. What's being done? Is there anything legislatively being done? How are you raising awareness on this?
A lot of our work is unfortunately playing defense because state governments, of all political, of both political parties, they're pushing more and more extreme forms of gambling. So a lot of what we do is trying to stop initial forms, this trying to stop expansion, right? They're trying to, some states are trying to add more and more extreme forms, so we win those fights. But for us, priority one is to get either the U.S. Senate or the U.S. House to have investigative hearings, congressional hearings, into commercialized gambling operators and bring them before Congress under oath and have them answer questions about the business model. Because these guys have had a free ride. Because state governments are a partner to this industry, no one touches them. It's because the state's a partner to it. It's like putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank. It's open season on the American people. And gambling, advertising, and marketing today, it's the public voice of American government. It's what we advertise to the folks more than anything else today.
We'll go to Boston, Mass. John is there. John, good afternoon. You're on the air with Les Bernal. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Les and Drew. Les, this is John Ribeiro. Just wanted to chime in and say that, 2 things. It's a lie that this brings in tax revenue, because what it does is it sucks tax dollars and revenue out of the state that would have been working in our communities, and it's taken out. And secondly, people should, go to Les's website, and educate yourself, and then contact your representatives, right? Because this is a partner of the state, it's being done in our name. And so once you learn about this, you reject it. And, going to your representatives is key to this, and holding them to account for bringing this poison into our homes and now into the hands of all of our children as well.
Wow. John, thanks for calling in and sharing that. Les, I'll let you respond.
Sure. Well, actually, it's great to hear John Ribeiro's voice. I haven't talked to John in several years. John led the repeal effort in Massachusetts to repeal casinos. He's a far more talented leader on this issue than I am. And it's great to hear him so eloquent on it. And it was great to hear his voice. He's dead on this. If you don't think this is affecting your family, you're mistaken. This is affecting every family in America today, whether you gamble or not.
I love what John said, though. I didn't realize this. He says it doesn't generate local tax revenue.
It's the ultimate budget gimmick. Over the long term, for those of you who don't gamble, even if you don't play, you're paying higher taxes over the long term for less services because of predatory gambling. It's the ultimate con.
Well, I've got to leave it right there. John in Boston, thank you for calling in and sharing that. Les, I want to thank you. People want to get connected. Maybe they're having their issues. They're struggling. They They need some direction. Let me give you the final thoughts here. What are some good resources, both to find help and also how to support your efforts?
Sure. So you can visit our website at stoppredatorygambling.org and get involved in this fight. If you want to make a difference in America, this is your issue. I mean, most of the problems we face in our country, a lot of them are connected to predatory gambling. And in terms of if you know someone in your life who needs immediate help, I would send you in the short term to go to gamblersanonymous.org. There'll be local meetings in your region. But if you also feel free to email us and we can connect you. If it's something very state specific, we can connect you with some treatment folks in your region.
Well, Les, thanks. Thanks for being here. Appreciate all that you do. And John in Boston, thank you for calling in as well. StopPredatoryGambling.org is a website. StopPredatoryGambling.org. Jot it down. The church doesn't outright condemn gambling, but it does place clear moral boundaries on it. And if you go to your catechism, it points out that, they become morally unacceptable when you deprive someone of what is necessary to provide for their needs or the needs of others. Hey, like what you just heard? Then share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.